Blind Nil Audio.
The cool thing about resistance training combined with endurance training is that being able to have some sort of aerobic activity will push that biological age backwards probably much faster than anything else.
What I love about this conversation right now is that we're discussing biological age and we're discussing being healthier. And we haven't even yet brought up the saunas or the cold plunges or the red lights, which we're putting our discussion into the things that are going to give us the most bang for our buck.
The icing on the cake are all those modalities you just named.
The sprinkles on the icing. We need to focus on eating enough high quality foods and exercise. You do that on top of getting good sleep, you're going to be pretty close to that finish line.
Hey, how do I reverse my age? And it's like, well, play like a kid and eat like you did in the 70s.
Welcome to Stronger. Today I'm excited to introduce Dr. Dwayne Jackson, a world-class health scientist with expertise across exercise physiology, medicine, and nutritional biochemistry. In this episode, we're diving into the science of anti-aging and how cutting-edge research is shaping the future of health and performance. I'm Don Saladino. Let's get stronger with Dr. Dwayne Jackson. So first off, 5-hour flight, just landed over at the gym across the street, little workout in, little sweat, reinvigorate you a bit. Some passport issues flying in from Vancouver. You're supposed to be in Sunday night. I thought we were going to have this whole week. I feel terrible now because you landed this morning, which is Wednesday, and you're going to be back out Saturday morning, which is a little bit of time. But welcome to New York, man.
Thanks, man. It's always nice to be in New York, especially visiting you.
Appreciate that. And I can't believe it's been a year. You know what's funny? That's the weird thing about FaceTime, right? Because you and I FaceTime 3-4 times a week. So I'm always seeing you. We're always talking, going through anything about life. When you said a year, I'm like, really?
Well, that's what I figured it was about a year. Yeah.
Gotta be.
Yeah. Because I think last time we were out, I think it was around October when we took your boat out.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yes.
That was like right at the end of the season.
Yeah, it was like the last ride.
We got to run it tonight or tomorrow or Friday or something like that. Or go to dinner over in Connecticut or something. But the topic I really want to lead off with you today, everyone's trying to biohack life, right? They're just trying to hack their way into living, a longer life, which I think is a great goal to have, right? If you want to live a high quality of life, that's fantastic. But I think there's so many people out there that are confused because there's individuals that are coming in at such a high level who have, disposable incomes. You're looking at this guy, Brian Johnson now, who actually did watch his documentary and people just rip into him all the time. I'll tell you why I respect him is because he turned around and he kind of owns it. Like, this is what he wants to do. This is how he wants to live. And, I think a lot of people might look at the way that you and I live and might find that strange. Well, why don't you just eat what you want all the time? Well, we enjoy what we eat and we enjoy waking up and training. And why would you get underweight? It's painful. Why would you go run? It's painful. Like, people can't understand what we receive out of these things that we do in our life. But I did have a level of respect for him because he took ownership on it. Now, do I think things that he's doing are very extreme? Yes. Do I think, what I want to do all these things? No. But there are things that he does that I do. I can understand the red light first thing in the morning and the training piece of it and, so many modalities that we can dive into. But reversing your biological age in a way is what he's trying to do. I mean, you're not going to reverse your age because we're going to age. It's like a bottle of wine on the shelf. You can't reverse that.
And it's inevitable.
It's inevitable. But reversing your biological age, let's start out real low level to explain to most people, because I think most scientists, and you are a scientist, are losing people in the first sentence. And then I'd like to build on that today. And I'd like to give people some comfort in telling them you don't have to do all these things, but maybe implementing certain things is going to help you live a higher quality of life where you'll live longer years and you'll be happier and you'll be healthier.
Yes. So biological age. So it's kind of a funny term now because it's come about with the latest fitness craze that we've had going through, which is great for people like us, so we can talk about these things. Mm-hmm. So chronological versus biological age really comes down to the biological part is, in a total nutshell, are you healthy?
Yeah.
Because most people actually, their health declines as they age.
Right.
And a lot of people out there now who have found, at working out, eating whole food, certain supplements, they've found that they feel younger and behave younger in their 50s, 60s, even 70s than they once did in their like 20s and 30s.
Right.
So it boils down to cellular health when we talk about science, right? And so that's measured by a number of different biometrics. And some of those can be measured with, your Oura Ring
Sure.
or your Apple Watch, a wearable of some sort.
And these are showing trends, right? I think we'd all agree that the data might be a bit different, but I think we're really needing to pay more attention to the trends, correct?
Absolutely.
Right.
And those are things like resting heart rate,
Sure.
HRV over time.
Which I think are very easy things to improve, by the way.
Absolutely.
These are not hard things to improve.
Not at all. In fact, probably one of the biggest missed opportunities when people think about decreasing their biological age is utilizing aerobic style exercise to push the limits of their mitochondria, of their cellular respiration in the mitochondria, and then accompanying that with a really high quality anti-inflammatory whole food diet that's got lots of variety and everything else in it.
Mm.
Most people who have ever started running notice that, especially when they're like 30 plus, that their performance increases very quickly with running, just being consistent 3 days a week. In fact, if I had a dollar for every person that said to me, yeah, well, I started out walking quickly, and then all of a sudden I was kind of jogging, and the next thing you know, I was qualifying for the Boston Marathon.
Right.
And that's purely because they've increased that mitochondrial capacity to be able to extract oxygen and turn that into ATP, which is the energy that we need, that we all want to feel when we're when we're aging.
Now, mitochondria. Talk about this, because I know a lot of people out there are a bit confused on what its role is and why, and you got to admit, over the last, maybe not in your world, but in the last 5 to 10 years, I'd probably say even more like 5 years, you're hearing this as a term thrown around a lot more. People are suddenly, it's funny how things go through in ebbs and flows, right? It trends. Suddenly you're hearing people talk more about mitochondrial health and cellular energy and how this can actually help, maybe reverse your biological age.
Yeah. So the mitochondria are, as we learn in probably grade 7 or 8, grade school anyway, they're the powerhouse of the cell. Mm-hmm. And they truly are, because our energy currency is adenosine triphosphate, or ATP.
ATP.
And ATP is a really, really potent energy source for activation of muscle, activation of different, organ tissues and everything else. So when we focus on improving mitochondrial function, which is generally hard because you have to work, and you have to work for, relatively long times. The duration is a long time. So that's why runners and whatnot generally have really good mitochondrial health. But the idea is that if you train your mitochondria by aerobic exercise, then you'll increase the density of those mitochondria. And then by doing so, that means you have greater numbers in your skeletal muscle and your heart, and, everywhere where we need to have ATP, which is, 90% of our cells. So when we are able to push the mitochondria, then that's when we are training the mitochondria. And as we feel like runners, for example, our split times get better, or our duration gets better, anything else, that's what we're seeing is an improvement in mitochondrial function. Mm-hmm. So people who train mitochondria on a regular basis through running and whatnot end up with greater mitochondrial density.
When you're saying running, you just mean aerobic activity.
I mean aerobic activity in general.
So it doesn't. I just want to be clear that like most people out there listen, well, I don't run. I do the air bike, or I like.
Yeah, aerobic activity in general. And the reason why I use running is because running's hard.
Yeah.
And when you run, and I'm not a runner, but when you run and you run a distance, you got to get back.
Sure.
And so, people will notice much greater when they're using outdoor activity in order to push those mitochondria, because they'll be, a distance from where they were before, and it's highly measurable. But you can do any sort of aerobic training to improve mitochondrial health.
Yeah, and that's where I would almost argue with people years ago, or even sports scientists, who would say, you know what, aerobic activity is a little bit more of the side dish in the sense of its level of importance. And I do like that line. I will quote my friend Ben Bruno, where he would say, I would consider resistance training as the entree and cardio as a side dish, but he's not neglecting cardiovascular training. And when people were discussing the importance of putting on muscle, which we all understand the importance of that, right? I will quote Dr. Lyon by saying, the muscle is the organ of longevity. And
Absolutely.
I absolutely love that line. But, if you're trying to put muscle on aerobic activity, stupid, it's dumb. But I would argue it because if your mitochondria health is improving, isn't that going to help improve everything?
Yes. So where cardio exercise kind of got hit was when everybody started thinking it was for fat burning and fat burning only. But really, when we do cardiovascular exercise, especially even at low intensity stuff, what you're doing is you're creating a higher capacity for slow twitch muscle to be able to take on lactate from the training sessions, which then allows you to push harder in your training sessions because your lactate threshold will go up because you have a lactate sink. And all of that really, the buzzword now is mitochondrial health. But at the end of the day, being able to have some sort of aerobic activity on a daily basis is great. Will push that biological age backwards probably much faster than anything else. Now, the cool thing about resistance training combined with endurance training is that one, you'll still build muscle, but two, you build muscle that's actually more adapted. So with heavy resistance training, you actually put your muscle through a process called mitophagy. And mitophagy is simply taking the mitochondria that have become defunct and not working very well as we age and throwing them in the trash. And then the nice part is when we go out and do the aerobic activity, we increase mitochondrial density. And then if we want to work those mitochondria real hard, that's when we do our HIIT training. So there's a place for all training modalities in trying to improve biological age.
How would you break down, in your opinion, through what you've studied, and let's say an entry level to a high level individual who wants to train mitochondrial health, what would you maybe assign to them in reference to a training volume frequency standpoint?
Yeah, so it really depends on what the individual is looking for and where they start. The beauty of this type of approach that we're talking about is that the people with the least capacity get the biggest results.
Bang for their buck, right?
Right.
I call it the honeymoon phase.
Right,
you can almost do anything and it's going to happen.
Right. So it's it really the training modalities are going to depend on the individual. But when we're talking about people that are say bodybuilders, for example, I work with a lot of bodybuilders. I talk about it in terms of conditioning because you see a lot of these guys that have a lot of muscle, but they're very inefficient. You hear them walking up the stairs and like breathing super heavy, and they're it's laborious to watch them move. And then you see other bodybuilders that are still 300 pounds, but they're doing flips and splits and everything else. Like look at Juji Mufu. He's a big one for that. And so he trains aerobically a lot. And that's so that he can sustain the amount of work that he does in his weight training, in his, I don't know what you call it, circus work where he's doing flips and stuff.
Yeah,
with big, massive barbells, like feats of strength. But these are feats of strength that are long duration. And so when we have conditioning, then we have mitochondrial health. And we can't have one without the other.
This episode of Stronger is brought to you by Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth offers temperature regulating sheets guaranteed to give you a comfortable night's sleep. So I was sent Cozy Earth's bamboo sheets a while back, and my sleep environment is my sanctuary. And I was blown away about how these sheets keep me cool. They are so comfortable for my wife, who runs very cold when she sleeps, and it doesn't freeze her. yet it's lowering my body's temperature and it's allowing me to breathe as I'm sleeping. And I like to sleep in a very cold environment. So for me, these sheets have become an absolute game changer. So I highly recommend you giving Cozy Earth a try. And right now you could try Cozy Earth's bamboo sheets risk-free with their 100-night sleep trial. Try them during the hottest nights of the year. And if you're not in love with them, which I know you will be, return them hassle-free. But trust me, you won't want it. There's a 10-year warranty on all bedding products. That's a decade of cool quality sleep. I mean, I've been sold on these things for a while. I don't know how you guys aren't going to give this a shot. Unbelievable. Luxury shouldn't be out of reach. Go to CozyEarth.com and use code STRONGER for up to 40% off Cozy Earth's best-selling temperature-regulating sheets, apparel, and more. Trust me, you'll feel the difference the very first night. That's CozyEarth.com. Code STRONGER. Sleep cooler, lounge lighter, stay cozy.
So you are completely in favor of mixing in different styles of cardiovascular training. I know it was a very broad question that I asked you, but for someone getting started, what would you recommend?
I'd absolutely, well, if they're starting at ground zero,
yes,
I would just give them the old 10,000 steps a day thing and hope that they get 5 because they're probably doing 300. And over time, what they'll notice is 5,000 steps was difficult this week, and now 6,500 feels a little bit easier than 5,000 did. And anybody who's listening, who's done this, will realize that all of a sudden they get to 10,000 steps, which is a pretty good, walk, right? If you have to go do it on one time.
Yeah, one time, that's
3 miles or so.
Yeah, about to say. Hey.
But the improvements happen real quick. Now, one thing I would tell them, though, the most important part of being able to take advantage of your cardiovascular sessions that you're just starting out at is to feed your cardio. So in other words, make sure you're eating, high quality mixed meals that have a relatively good carbohydrate component. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about biological health, mitochondrial function and everything else and aerobics, it's glucose that gets chewed up. And every carbohydrate that we eat ends up becoming glucose in the blood. And glucose is the energy currency for the ATP to become the energy currency. So we really need to make sure that people are eating. And that's one thing I've noticed in my practice, and I'm sure you've seen in yours, we've had lots of conversations about this, is that most people find that the work they need to do to push the mitochondria too difficult because they're not eating the substrates they 100%. Need to do it.
David Perlmutter disagreed with me years ago on a podcast. I think most people are just undernourished, and I think they're undereating. He goes, no, we're in a fat society because people are overeating and they're eating too much processed foods. I'm like, I get that, but you have to look at the patterns. Most people who are trying and want it, right, are waking up and what are they doing for breakfast? A Greek yogurt, some fruit. I had a good first meal. Or a couple of eggs and some fruit, or maybe a grain bread, a grain toast. Mid-morning, maybe it's a shake. Then suddenly we're jumping into afternoon, and what are they having? A salad with some fish on it, whatever it might be. So you might be getting some foods that are micronutrient dense, but the reality is think about those 3 meals and add up the amount of calories that you just consumed. Is that going to get the car to its destination? And the answer is no. And what I find is blood sugar level, that becomes a massive problem. The evening rolls around, people are at home, they're undernourished, and then they're binge eating because they have a stressful day and their blood sugar level's off. And my line is always, if I cooked for you for a day, I can almost guarantee you're not going to be eating chips or ice cream at night. In your experience, do you find this consistent where people are just afraid of calories? And by not getting enough calories, they underperform, and this can affect their biological age. This could affect their mitochondrial health.
Absolutely. Because we have to work to get the health, right? And the food is actually one of the integral components when we talk about biological age. Eating whole food mixed diet is part of that process. It's highly anti-inflammatory, especially if you follow a Mediterranean style diet. I usually recommend that, but with higher protein because it's a very low protein diet.
Great diet. It's probably one of my favorites in all fairness.
And I mean, it's the only one actually where all the science, it's like, hey, for heart disease, here's what we do. Let's call it the DASH diet, or for kidney disease, let's call it some other diet, but it's actually all Mediterranean.
So comical how people just want to make stuff up. By the way, it's all packaging.
Oh yeah,
it really is.
It's like it's something new, right? Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because when you introduce an abundance of high quality whole foods, number one, people all of a sudden realize their plates are a lot more full. And so the volume of these foods is much higher. So their propensity to be able to eat it all is going to be, much lower until they get themselves into eating these foods. And you've probably noticed that when you start eating, a lot of salad and a lot of rice or potatoes or sweet potatoes or these kind of things, nuts and everything else, like you look at your plate at first, it's a little daunting. So when you show someone that who's been brainwashed that low calorie diets are the way to roll and get the physique they want, there's a big ambivalent disconnect between those two, and you got to build a bridge. And so one of the best things to do is get a any person out there that's listening to this is to start with a diet that has, you have your starches on your plate, you've got some salad on there, you've got 2 or 3 different vegetables, maybe carrots, broccoli, and some cauliflower or something.
Nothing fancy.
Nothing fancy.
Right.
And then a nice piece of protein. Just call it that.
This is your traditional plate. Like this is what it looked like when
I grew up.
Yeah. This is when you're, watching TV back, putting on those TV shows 50, 60 years ago, and suddenly you're looking at the family eating their plate. It's their protein, it's their starch, and it's their veg.
Yep.
There are no tricks here.
There's no tricks. But the trick is that what's happened over time is people have been, fed information or fed misinformation on, what it takes to perform as a human. And not performing as an athlete, performing as a human. And so there's a massive biopsychosocial context within this. So we have our biology, and that's, what we got. And that's kind of what we're trying to push with this biological age thing. So, we got our genes and we got our blood work and we got all those fancy things, that we measure. But then we've got the whole psychosocial components. And those are becoming more and more apparent that they play a much bigger role in biological age and health and everything else, because the peer groups you hang around, the types of news and whatever it is, social media that you listen to, and your overall psychology, they're all overlapping. And so all of both the psychological features and social features of being a human actually play a massive role in our biology. We saw this during COVID, during lockdowns. So when we are, receiving information based on pretty much fallacy about, how to eat to become healthier in your old age. This is where the problem is, because like you said, I had a Greek yogurt and fruit in the morning. Like, why don't I have any energy? And it's like, well, let's start with the fundamentals. Calories are a measurement of energy. And when you're eating 300 calories for breakfast and then trying to push yourself for 800 calories, it's going to be tough. And when you do that, it's going to over time not be sustainable. And so that's one of my goals, is to get people eating again, because when we get people eating, they perform better. And when they perform better, they feel better. And then the social context gets better because they start looking good, feeling good, maybe going out a little more and hanging out with their friends. And all of a sudden now they're joining the triathlon group and they're heading out to the Ironman in Hawaii, 4 years later. So it's, the focus on the plate has been a big problem, in terms of making it as small as possible. And that's kind of transpired into all this other stuff, which has led to now, hey, how do I reverse my age? And it's like, well, play like a kid and eat like you did in the 70s.
Well, what I love about this conversation right now is that we're discussing biological age and we're discussing being healthier. And we haven't even yet brought up the saunas or the cold plunges or the red lights, which again, we're putting our discussion into the things that are going to give us the most bang for our buck. And it is. And it's ironic that people want to nitpick all those modalities that I just named. I own those. I have them at my house. You and I will use them.
Yep.
It's fun. It's nice to sit in the sauna with you and get a sweat and talk, or jump in the plunge for a couple seconds and feel good and lay in the red light bed a few mornings a week. Like it's fun to do those things. But when you're ranking them in order of importance, I mean, it's like they're not even close, in my opinion. Like, I don't even know. We make such a big deal about these things where the reality is we need to focus on eating enough high quality foods and exercise. You
Absolutely.
do that on top of getting good sleep, I believe you're going to be pretty close to that finish line.
The icing on the cake are all those modalities you just named. And
the sprinkles on the icing. It's like these are
yeah.
It's not even.
It's not. Yeah. And it's funny because the biggest problem right now is that people are seeking modalities and easy ways to hack their biological age. And without having a foundation of just turning on those mitochondria by movement, you are not going to achieve what you think. Doesn't matter what peptide you use, doesn't matter what modality you shoot with. If you have metabolic syndrome.
Can you explain that, please?
Yeah. So if if you're overweight, by 30, 40 pounds, and you have high blood glucose and you have hyperinsulinemia or high insulin levels. So basically what happens is your skeletal muscle is no longer responsive to blood glucose, despite it actually possibly having low glycogen, which is the sugar that's in our muscles. The sugar just circulates. And when that happens, then those mitochondria don't get to do that whole oxidative phosphorylation and all that fancy stuff where they create a lot of ATP. And that's why people then feel exhausted when they walk from their car to the local Kroger's or wherever they're going to shop. It's because we're not getting the substrates that we take into the cells that take and make the energy that make us move. And you can do red light therapy all day long, but if you have, high blood glucose, which would indicate that you're not getting to go to the right places, then you're not going to make any changes in your mitochondrial health, biological age, or any of that stuff. The biggest predictor of biological age, you'll see it on your Apple Watch or whatever you use, is going to be that VO2 calculation that it does on there. Mm-hmm. And that's just strictly because what that's saying is like, how well can I take the stuff I put in my mouth and turn it into heat and movement? That's all it says. And when someone has a high VO2 max, they can take a piece of food and turn it into movement and a little heat. And so that's where the essence of this whole thing comes from. Once you got that foundation, play around. Yeah, like red light therapy works great for the skin because you have lots of mitochondria in the skin and everything else. But if you're under high oxidative stress all the time from, not moving in stressful environments, you got a stressful marriage, and, you're eating like high density, low micronutrient foods, high calorie density and low micronutrient density, which are fast foods generally, you're going to be driving inflammation and oxidative stress and all those things that actually uncouple mitochondria from doing their job.
Now, someone comes to you, and this might sound like I'm getting off topic, but I'm not. Someone comes to you and they're consuming 12 to 1,300 calories a day, and they need to be consuming, 22 to 2,300 calories a day. Talk about what this can do to their health, and talk about your process and getting them to consume more calories, and how, on top of improving their overall health, this might very well improve their body composition. Yet most people think, well, I want to lose weight, I have to just drop calories more. You can't go from 1,300 calories to 1,100 calories if your body's stalled out and expect to lose more weight. Like I think you're just going to move less and get less healthy. So can you talk to me in simplest terms about your process? Because I want people to listen to this who are undercaloried and start asking themselves, maybe I'm not getting in good enough nutrition or enough nutrition. And, what can you tell them to help?
Yeah. So when we eat a very low calorie diet over time, so you say we start at 1,700 calories and then we take out, 10 or 20% of the calories and keep reducing over time. Weight loss is coming really well. Depending on how aggressive we are with those calorie drops and how long those are sustained for, our body undergoes a process called metabolic adaptation or adaptive thermogenesis. And what that simply means is the body's going to defend its body mass, and it will do that real well. And so it first starts with actually decreasing the amount we move subconsciously. So that's called non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Mm-hmm. And the subconscious movements are like fidgeting, like, we both fidget.
Oh, what I'm doing all day. That's my neat right there. Yeah.
Get up, get down, go to the water cooler, come back, talk to Dave, right? All of a sudden now you're sitting in your office and you're not getting up to do anything because you're fasting for, 24 hours. That's the first kind of adaptation that really people don't notice that they lose. And that's actually makes up
that's a lot.
The biggest portion beyond our basal metabolic rate. It makes it the biggest portion of our calorie burn in the day. It's not your exercise. It's not anything else. Not the thermic effect of food. It's the non-exercise activity thermic.
And just to educate people a little bit, he's talking about BMR. So BMR, basically, it's the amount of calories you're burning at rest. So
that's right. Yeah,
if you were to sit here all day long and not move, you still have this baseline amount of calories that you guys are going to burn. Now you throw on activity and you start creating this total daily energy expenditure, which is how much fuel do you need to be successful throughout a day?
Yeah. And that adapts. And so does the BMR, because what happens over time, and it doesn't take long, this could take 4 weeks or so in a very low calorie diet. When we should be eating 2,000 calories and we drop it down to 1,200. The other adaptations that occur are, one of them is that we start seeing drops in testosterone and estradiol and everything else. So we start seeing hormonal problems. Women would, any woman that is, dieted for a long period of time at real low calories, probably didn't have menstruation for months, if not years.
Yep.
So in that adaptation, we also have, when we talk about mitochondria, we have mitochondrial coupling, because what usually happens with mitochondria when we eat protein is it puts off more heat than it does work. And when we start to go into a phase of what the body would perceive as starvation, those mitochondria actually become more efficient at utilizing the energy, which is kind of counterintuitive. And then with that, we also have changes in hormones that make us feel full, satiety hormones, things like GLP-1, which is a big one right now. That actually the satiety hormones go down, and then the hormones that make us feel hungry, like ghrelin and the other ones, they go up. So the body's doing everything in its power to reverse the process of fat loss, weight loss, or whatever it is that's going on at that time. So the key to this, and I do this, actually every one of my clients I do this with, and I teach a course on this, is when people report to you that they've been eating 1,400 calories and they're stuck. And that's generally when people come to me, and probably most people, most coaches. What you need to do is do what I call calorie finding, where you actually calculate their basal metabolic rate and their total daily energy expenditure, which is just easy online. You can find a calculator for TDEE if they want to search. And you can
use like a Mifflin calculator or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. You put your body weight and your sex and your age. And
this is going to get you into, this may not be exact, but it's going to get you into a pretty good range.
Well, it's going to tell you that you're probably not eating enough. And then you're going to say, well, that calculator didn't work. And so, but what's neat about it is that, that's a starting point. And so if someone's coming to you and you're pretty convinced they've been eating 1,400 calories a day, but they're, 5'11" and they're weighing in at 196 pounds, which happens a lot, I know that just by taking their calculation of what they should be eating, right, from their total daily energy expenditure, and just knocking, say, 10 or 20% of the calories down on that, and that usually take them out from carbs and fat, I know that they will recover from that metabolic adaptation. And so what usually happens is that you give them the diet, they're like, oh, there's no way I could eat this. Last time I ate 1,700 calories was, back when I was 15. And you say, well, just give it a whirl. And at first they're having trouble finishing the meals and everything else. And by the end of the week, they feel so good. Their physical performance has gone up. Their work performance has gone up. Their sleep has, increased greatly in terms of quality. Their sex life is returning. And so now all of a sudden that psychosocial stuff starts to come into context. And when you meet with them the next time, they'll say to you like, man, I haven't had this much energy in forever. And it's like, well, because energy is calories.
Right.
And our currency is ATP, and ATP requires substrates like glucose in order to deal with it. And if it doesn't have glucose or not enough glucose, then it'll burn fat. And if fat's not fast enough and glucose is going down, then it starts taking your muscle. Cortisol's gone up, breaks down your muscle. The
Big
amino
problem.
acids then go to the liver and become glucose.
Big problem.
So it's all tied together, and there's no way. It's not separate. They're individual energy systems, but they're all overlapping, and they're all doing their thing all the time.
Ironic how, we started discussing reversing your biological age and getting healthier. And what do we immediately start talking about? Movement, exercise. We start talking about nutrition, the importance of a balanced plate, protein, slow burning carbohydrates, and your vegetable. It sounds like that in reference to where to start. Most people, we're all starting at such different spots. So I think just getting out and walking going to be very beneficial. That's what we're reiterating there. Starting to do maybe some longer cardiovascular sessions that you're not used to, whether it's 20, 30 minutes. Is that the best thing? It might be the best thing for you. Choosing a modality where you're going to be successful with. So maybe running's not good for you. Maybe it's good for me. Doesn't make me any better than you. It's just what works for our bodies according to maybe past injuries or how we're moving or what our bodies are allowing us to do. Resistance training, you're also saying, incredibly important.
Absolutely.
Where would you start someone from a resistance training standpoint, days a week? They haven't picked up a weight. How many days a week would you like them to get in, and for what duration? And obviously, programs, there's so many different approaches. We're not even going to get into that, but just to give them a little bit of food for thought.
Yeah, I'd start with 3 days a week.
Perfect.
Full body workouts and 30 minutes each.
I absolutely love it. I love it.
And there's lots of data to show that those 3 day a week, 30-minute full body workouts,
I love it.
They're sustainable. They're challenging enough at the front end that they keep you engaged, and they work.
And I don't want people to feel inadequate if their friend is going 5 days or 6 days. I have trained 6 days, 5 days, 4 days. And I can tell you that I don't know what's better. I think it depends on the time of the year. If my body allows me the flex a little bit more time and I'm not playing a lot of hockey and doing a lot of other things, maybe I can get away with 6 days. 4 days, I find my body recovers a lot better because I like to push during the session. So I don't want people to think that 3 days isn't enough. 3 days is plenty for someone getting started. Mixing in maybe some steady state work, starting them. Where would you start them with steady state? After the steps piece, the 10,000 steps, if they want to start training their cardiovascular system a little bit more intensely, where would you start them from a steady state standpoint and from a higher intensity training standpoint?
Yeah. So in the most generic terms, I would say if you kept your heart rate somewhere in the mid to high 120s, maybe dip into the 130s, you're just getting started out. That's probably going to be
pretty safe.
Probably going to be safe and intense enough for those people. And as you progress and you start to notice that you're, on the treadmill or bicycle, whatever it is you're on, that you're kind of every now and then trying to break into a jog or, trying to put a little more elevation or resistance on the training, then I would have them start to break out into HIIT training, depending on where they sit for their fitness. Because HIIT training is a really neat one because it really pushes the mitochondria hard, and it's kind of the next step in my eyes to having that base aerobic capacity.
Right. So when someone is reading an article and they hear HIIT training is the best, but they haven't even started with slower steady state cardio. Start with the slower state cardio, lay that aerobic base down, build some confidence. And then in time, I always recommend choosing a modality. I like for beginners, it's probably one of the harder ones, but the Airdyne bike. Awesome. I think it's very low skill, very easy on their joints. Anyone can get on. It's not like sprinting, which I think is a high level of skill and a high level of risk reward for someone who is not used to throwing in that modality. So I think that's a great place to start. Supplementation, we got to dive in on it a little bit. Creatine now being one of the most highly researched supplement on the planet, something that probably most human beings are starting to take now, where 10, 15 years ago, I don't want to get bigger, right? Urolithin A, other supplements. I know Mitochondria, one of my partners, they've been a great partner. How do you utilize that in your regimen in reference to reversing biological age? Yeah,
so some of the ones I really like, one that's kind of really underestimated is GlyNAC or glycine and NAC, so N-acetylcysteine. And if you're taking, 1 to 2 grams of glycine, L-glycine, an amino acid, and 1 to 2 grams of N-acetylcysteine, which is a precursor to glutathione, which is a master antioxidant in the body. Right. There are great data showing that one will help a lot with, longevity, biological age, however we want to kind of pitch this, right? So that's one of them. The other would be creatine. Definitely it's a wonderful supplement, especially for people, all ages. But now in the aging category where people are starting to be concerned with biological age, it's something that people should be using. Women, for muscle preservation, brain health, everything else. This was once reserved for bodybuilders. Now it's, a lot of people that weren't taking this stuff are taking it now and in their older age.
You almost feel like everyone should be taking it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Now you have your NMNs and your NAD pluses and, your Lecithin A. They're all great products to utilize, but the real key to this is to make sure that you have a foundation of biological health first.
Right.
Or you're going to spend a lot of money to get very little bang for your buck.
Right.
Now, for those that actually have, taken care of their oxidative stress and taken care of all their inflammation in their body and everything else, these products can be very, very effective in pushing the envelope for the biological age or biological health, mitochondrial health spectrum.
I want to dive into oxidative stress because we're talking about so many things that are good for us, but I also want to talk about how we can push that biological age to move in the wrong direction. And I think the best example that I give is you look at that 60-year-old rock star that looks like they're 85 because they were drinking and on the road and lacking in sleep and smoking cigarettes. And okay, so now their biological age probably moved in the wrong direction. It probably moved worse than where their actual age really is. So can you talk about some of the things that people should think about?
Absolutely. It's oxidative stress and inflammatory stress kind of work hand in foot. And most disease is actually develops from an inflammatory insult and an oxidative insult because the immune system kind of talks to each other through these different mechanisms. And so if, and you hit the nail on the head, by the way, by saying, you're taking things backwards with a lot of these things.
Yep.
So yeah, if you're drinking alcohol on a regular basis, then there is going to be an elevated level of oxidative stress in your body. And if you're not getting in an abundance of antioxidants in your diet, then you're not going to be buffering any of that oxidative stress. And this is why people who, eat very, very high meat diets, which I'm a meat eater big time. We'll probably go eat some big old steaks soon.
100%.
But they don't fortify it with antioxidant style foods like our fruits, vegetables, berries.
A big problem with the carnivore diet, right?
Absolutely. Then we end up with inflammatory stress mounted on top of oxidative stress. And that is kind of the nail in the coffin for people that are aging. And so getting that under control is highly important. Yeah, you can take antioxidants as supplements and everything else. Vitamin C is a very potent one, for example. But the key is to actually get it in your diet because your diet is the chronic condition. Like we should be constantly feeding that engine. And when you're always feeding the engine and you're feeding it with the right stuff, then your antioxidant status goes way up in the body, so your oxidative status goes down. And the mitochondria are actually very susceptible to oxidative stress. In fact, creating ATP through this process called the electron transport chain puts off piles of reactive oxygen species, which are heavy oxidative stress. So if you're pushing yourself now in the gym, and then you're going to out drinking after the gym and then not sleeping that night, you're actually doing the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. That workout isn't benefiting you. It's likely causing more oxidative stress.
It's stress on stress. And then, you'll look at individuals that think that might be eating a very macronutrient dense diet, but it's not heavy in micro. Yep. And then that becomes a problem because if they're just eating chicken and rice, well, you're getting some good protein, carbs, a little bit of fats in there. Like to most sounds like a nutritious meal, but there's no micronutrients. This is a problem that I think most people are having just in general. They'll look at things and they ask a general question like, is having 2 glasses of wine a week bad? Or is having a dessert once a week bad? We're at 2. Or is having a poor night's sleep once a week bad? That's 3. Is maybe having a cheat meal once a week bad? That's 4. you start taking these things that we should be able to get away with. You would admit it, right?
Yep.
One night of sleep, bad night's sleep a week, fine. Going, if you ate a beautiful diet and out of nowhere you went and you crushed some Five Guys on a Saturday night, is that going to ruin you? It sounds delicious. Is it going to ruin you? No. It's the accumulation of all these things. Then you start looking at your diet and you start looking at the fact that what you think you're eating is healthy. It's just not enough.
Yep.
Or it's just not rich enough in nutrition. Think about that word, nutrition. You want what you're consuming to be powerful so your body can be powerful, right? And I think this is where most people are getting hurt because they're trying to justify their behavior with, it's just 2 glasses of wine a week. And to me, like, honestly, doesn't sound like the biggest deal if you're nailing everything else.
Yep.
But if you couple that with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things, a stressful lifestyle, a bad relationship, a poor work environment, this starts becoming catastrophic. And this is why people are consistently sick. They're aging. They might look aging faster than they should be. Those lines and bags under their eyes are starting to appear after a rough week. Exactly. I'm seeing it now.
Having a rough flight.
A rough flight.
Yeah, you nailed it. And that's the, if you look at the Mediterraneans, right? If you look at the Europeans and the Mediterranean countries, they drink wine. But there's some of the, they have some of the best biological clocks out there. I know there's lots that don't, but the reason why, you can have the glass of wine and it actually can promote some health benefits through, some phytonutrition or I guess whatnot from it, some resveratrol and these kind of things. But the key here is that it's in a social context a lot of times. So they eat very socially, Europeans. It's also in a context where the meals are heavily mixed. They have olives and they have nuts and there's high quality starches and fish and lots of fish oil and fresh.
Yeah, fresh oils, yeah.
And that's where it's like, yes, this is the Mediterranean diet. And they actually show, when they show a Mediterranean diet has wine with it, I don't know how many clients of mine have said, oh, so I can drink wine. That's all they saw. Right?
That's why it becomes a very difficult question for a coach to answer, because you're like, can I have this? And you're like, I'm almost want to say, I don't know, because there's so many other factors in your life that I need to understand. Like if you're eating the way you and I eat and you want to go out on a Saturday night and have a bowl of pasta and a couple meatballs and 2 glasses of red wine, like, okay. Like I'm almost in a way, well, if your blood markers are good and it's making you happy and you're getting a good night's sleep and you're hydrating after that wine, then I would do it every Saturday night if I were you then. But when all these other things add up, I think that's when it becomes a massive problem.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, if you're feeling inflamed and you're feeling low in energy and you have lethargy and your sleep's bad and everything else, start cleaning up those variables first. And generally that'll start with a really high quality diet. And then when we start getting those cleaned up, then, you'll start to reap the benefits of this whole, like, reversing your biological age.
Energy level improves.
That's right.
Body composition, ironically, I find in the first maybe week or two, maybe you put on a pound or 2 from eating more, more food, and then your body starts leveling off. And then, 9.5 out of 10 times I hear from people, oh my God, I'm down 2 belt sizes. Oh my God, my steps are up. Oh my God, my sleep quality has improved. All these incredible benefits. I just find it's very difficult for most to believe and trust in the process and then stick it out the first week or 2. Chris, we're going to take some questions now. Thanks, DJ. This is fantastic.
All right. So I have a question from Frank, and Frank is from New York. So here's Frank.
Hey, Don and Dr. Jackson. My name is Frank DiCarado from Comac, New York. My question is regarding stem cell therapy for injury and pain. What's the overall efficacy? Who might benefit? Who might not? And we see a lot of fighters, celebrities heading down to Panama, for example, for therapy. What is the future for stem cell therapy here in the U.S.? Thanks for the opportunity.
Frank, thank you. And Comac, it's kind of not too far from where I'm from. So my neighbor over there. So that's a great question. I'm going to kick that over to you.
Yeah, stem cells. So here's the thing. So stem cells, so you can go to Dubai, you can go down to Cabo, you can go, to Costa Rica. on these
Nice places.
nice place to visit. Exactly. These medically related, trips, medical vacations. And the biggest issue with stem cell treatments is there's multiple different types of stem cells, and they haven't been really proven to improve injury, kidney disease, any of these things to the efficacy that they're being promoted to do. And there's a reason why we don't actually have them in the US or Canada for that matter, in terms of being a regular treatment. And that's because the clinical trials just don't show the huge efficacy that's being purported in the industry. The big one that really got me was, there are people that are going to these places to have their kidney function improved with stem cells, and I that's near and dear to my heart because I have a kidney transplant. And the advertising is, hey, if you do these stem cell treatments in your kidney, then we can reverse kidney disease. And I'll tell you, if that was the case, then we would solve a multi-trillion-dollar problem in the world. So there's a lot of hope. Stem cells has been around a long time. I was working with stem cells way back, in 2006, 2007 in the university looking at cancer treatments. But right now there's a few issues. One is how do we keep them alive and viable? Number two is, these localized treatments that we see a lot of times in joints and everything else, are we truly getting them localized, or are they going systemic? Highly likely they're systemic. And then for the systemic treatments, they're being kind of reported to home in and find the area that needs to be repaired. And that's a little bit, misleading, I believe.
And I have heard, and I would imagine that it's worked on a few people, right? And I think that's where it gets confusing, right? Because someone might get a good response from it. Do you think it's all right? Well, it just depends on how we respond to it, and we're seeing it respond on less people than more, and there's a massive cost and travel. I think what I always feel like with stem cells, it's like it's the last resort.
Absolutely, it's like a phase 1 clinical trial where you're like, okay, I got to try this at this point, and this is the last thing I got. Absolutely, and there have been people that have had success, whether or not it's directly related to the stem cell treatment or not. Likely, maybe. When you look at other treatments that are kind of similar, so we look at platelet-rich plasma. Injections into shoulders, and when we have issues with torn labrums and stuff like that, it works for some and it doesn't for others. But really that's because you're at the discretion of the physician that's treating it, trying to pinpoint exactly where the problem is, and that can be difficult sometimes. Mm-hmm. So right now it's a mixed bag. Some people do well with them and they say, hey, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Other people say, I just wasted 30 grand.
I almost feel like more people say the latter.
Not at first though.
Yeah.
Not at first, because they're stoked to go to.
Yeah. So do you feel like it's almost a placebo in the beginning?
Well, it's funny for some, yes. For the kidney folks, no, because you measure EGFR, right?
Of course.
But what ends up happening is it's a transient effect. All you're doing is dilating the renal arteriole, which makes the blood flow faster into the kidney, and then it looks like you have more
improved function.
Yeah.
Very good. First off, Dr. Jackson, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
You're about to become my first repeat person. So, because I'm bringing you back in really quickly. And I just want to thank the team over at the Post here. I think this place is incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah. Christian Ponder did a great job. Ex-NFL quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, kind of started his own We Work for Athletes. So it's been a pleasure to be here. And listen, thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
The views, information, or opinions expressed in this series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Chip and Joanna Gaines, Binel Audio, nor Magnolia.